Welcome to episode number 86 of Soul Night Live. This is our first anniversary episode with a look back at highlights from the last year and special guests. And tonight, my co-host is Stephen Cox. It's our 1 year anniversary. So today we're going to take a look back at highlights and different interviews from the past year. And with me tonight is my good friend, Stephen Cox, my co-host.
How's it going?
Hey, Stephen. Good to see you. How's life been treating you?
Oh, it's been good. I can't complain. Been able to play weddings and a couple other things, and listening to a lot of good music and doing the YouTube stuff. So I can't complain at all.
Yeah, remind everybody what your channel is over at YouTube for your U-Bass instructional videos and such.
Yeah. So I do a lot of U-Bass stuff, as Sean just mentioned, at youtube.com/Stephen Cox Bass. You can probably see how to spell it in the corner of the screen, Stephen Cox, and then bass like the instrument.
Yeah, and in case y'all don't know, it's like a ukulele bass.
Yeah, let me
break it out and show it real quick while I'm
Let me grab one with the rubber strings.
ducks in a row here.
Crazy ones, polyurethane strings and whatnot. So usually you plug it in to make it louder, but
yeah, I can hear it just fine.
It's not very loud on its own. But yeah, I do product reviews and lessons and live streams on Thursdays and stuff. So check it out if you want to, if you like that kind of stuff or just bass guitar in general.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a year. It's been quite a year.
Yes.
And here we are at episode number 86.
86.
I know.
That's amazing that you've gotten through 86 in 1 year.
Yeah, that's
more than one a week.
Yeah, it is. Well, some weeks there were a
half.
lot, and other weeks there were just one because I want to make anybody wait too long.
Right.
I try to schedule everything about a month in advance, but anything beyond that, I try not to make anybody wait too long. How y'all doing? Hey, Adrian. Hey, Bradford. Hey, Rob. Good to see y'all. Thanks for coming in. Yeah, man. Celebration. Yeah, it is. It's a big birthday celebration. And, I never would have expected to do this. And we're going to have a couple friends drop in and hang out for a bit. And then we're going to roll the highlight reel of 20 little 2-minute snippets from different interviews. I've picked out 20 really cool stories from 20 different really cool guests. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to make a best of with everybody that's been on the show, but this alone is going to take quite a while. So you just know I'm thankful that you're on the show and you're the best. And I want to thank everybody that's been on every episode this year because y'all made it go around. You made it work. And I'm really proud of the way things have turned out.
Yeah, I feel like you've come a long way while you're pulling that up.
Well, thank you. I didn't really expect to be a talk show host, but in a way, I've been talking about music for decades online, and it just seemed like the next natural progression, I suppose, to, have a show and really talk about it. And I think some people had kind of encouraged me in the past, like, you'd be really good at having a show about this. So, with the onset of COVID, we were just trying out the Zoom one night, me and Steven, and, had a few friends on just to see how it worked. And, I don't know who suggested it or Steven or if I thought it up, but it was like, well, I could have some friends of mine on here that are, fairly well-known names in the music business and interview them. And,
I think you mentioned a podcast or something. You weren't quite completely sure, and I just kind of when you connected it with YouTube, it was like, oh, this is perfect. I just knew, like, when you were talking about doing this interview stuff, it's like, yeah, who's the better person? Who's the best person for it? I think you're about as good as they come, for this, because you got this real nice, chill, conversational style with everybody, and you have all the connections to pull all these people onto the show, which is insane.
Well, it's been lucky and
really cool.
And sometimes it isn't really about connections. Sometimes it's just a matter of writing their website and asking them straight up, do you want to do this? And, a great number said sure. And I really appreciate that. And I really want to thank the ones that kind of got me started too. My first few interviews, my friend Jake Livgren, talking about Kansas related music that he's been part of. He'll be in our best of reel here in a few minutes. And Mike Keneally, another good friend of mine, did one of the first episodes, and Roger Joseph Manning Jr. from Jellyfish and Licorice Quartet. They were like the first ones I did, and I appreciate them taking a chance on me. And 85 episodes later, here we are. So it's been quite an unexpected year, but it's been a great year, and I want to thank you all for tuning in and making this show successful, because it really gave me a purpose in a year when I didn't have one. And I really needed something positive to focus on to get me through. And this did the trick. And so thank you all, and thanks to all my guests. I'm stunned when I look at the roster. I'm just like, wow, did I really talk to all these people? This is amazing. So anyhow, if you have yet to sign up for our YouTube page, please swing by YouTube. It's /SOAL, SOAL, Night Live. And, SOAL stands for Story of a Life, because each one of these shows is sort of biographical.
I just think it's really cool that you've made it from 0 to 900 subscribers. So I'm probably just going to, before I ask anything, just congratulate you on making it to a nice round number right there. I know I had a friend or two help, but you were so close to 900. Like, man, it'd be nice if you had that nice round number on there. But yeah, I'm excited for you to get to 1,000, because I mean you're pretty much there in a year. So when you started, I guess I'm going to ask you a couple questions about that. But just
Okay.
what gave you the idea? Really,
Boredom.
Boredom.
I
Fair
suppose
enough.
is the short answer. The
Fair
long
enough.
answer is, I can't say that I really thought about being an interviewer per se, but I've done some interviews in print a few times over the
Wait.
years. So, for me, here's the thing. It's like everybody I chat with on this show is someone whose music has made my life better, that I'm familiar with. Um, that way, I know enough about it to feel like I can really interview this person, with some knowledge of their work. I have people approach me a lot, will you interview my band? And it's like, I'm not against the idea of doing it, but I'm not familiar with your music, and I'm going to have to get familiar with it. And if I fall in love with it, then yes, maybe we will chat. So it's not a no. It's just a let me hear it and give me time, and
Right.
then we'll see kind of situation. So I appreciate anybody that reaches out and sees this show as a great place to share their wonderful music, and I'm honored that people would think to ask to do that. So thank you.
Awesome.
Um,
I know you had a cool list. A cool list of people will go through later on, I'm sure, in this show. But do you have any people on your wish list for next year, now that you're a year into it? Just putting it out there in the universe, kind of thing. Maybe someone has a random in.
um, well, sure, I've got quite a wish list. I would love to speak with Adrian Belew, for starters. Adrian Belew has been at the top of
Awesome.
my list since I started this show, and I think he's been busy recording an album. I'm hoping now that it's done, he will be making the rounds, because I would love to chat with him. Um, I would love to chat with any of the guys from Kansas, and fingers crossed that might just happen in the next couple weeks. That's
Awesome.
my hometown boys, and they were an inspiration, and I love their music, so I very much want to chat about their new live album. And I'd love to chat with some different people outside of the prog realm as well. One of my favorites of late is the group Squeeze, and their lead guitarist and vocalist, Chris Glenn Tilbrook. Not Chris Difford. Chris Difford would be great too. Love him, but the, the guy I really want to chat guitar with is Glenn Tilbrook. So that would be great. And anybody from 10cc, I had a great time chatting with Kevin Godley. I'd love to chat with Graham Goldman sometime. He wrote a lot of great 50s pop hits before he was even in 10cc. Songs like Bus Stop for the Hollies and Heart Full of Soul from the Yardbirds. that kind of stuff. So yeah, I guess that's some of my wish list.
Awesome.
And hey to everybody in the chat room, hope y'all are doing well. Cool. So anyhow, I thought I would bring in our very first guest ever. Back before we even knew this was a thing, we did a show chatting with our friend Anthony Mancini, who's a local jazz fusion guitar player. So I thought we would bring him in now and catch up and see how he's been doing the past year.
It's cool.
So how's it going?
It goes. How are you guys going?
Doing pretty well. Good. It's been a pretty amazing year. I can't complain.
Same.
It's like I managed to keep myself busy. What have you been working on?
Just doing lessons and playing and recording, whatever. It feels like even though this has been a year, it feels pretty much like it did about a year ago still.
Yeah, it's not radically different. Do you feel like you might want to get out and play anytime soon, or you still?
Or have you been?
Or have you?
I have a Saturday and Sunday gig at Piedmont Park, and we have these barricades.
Nice.
Barricades. And we've done that. It's outdoors. It's in the middle of the park. So that's kind of been that's been like where I've dipped my toes in pretty much, and felt like I'm not gonna be too bad, at least not too bad anyways.
Well, outside I think is the safest place to go right now, and it's the best time of year to do it anyway. So, I'd be wanting to play out anyway, no matter what happened.
Right.
Play outside, and the outdoor gigs are always fun. Well, unless it's raining, then it's awful.
I'm digging the setup, by the way. It's really awesome.
Yeah, you got the camper back there, blinking and at you ready. Very cool. Very cool. So, have you thought about getting tickets to see Genesis?
That came up, and every Sunday we call my wife's father. He's really into prog, and we mentioned that literally yesterday. So I don't know. We're on the fence. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I have a feeling they're going to go really quickly. So if you're thinking about it, there's a pre-sale thing you can sign up for, and I would highly suggest it. I think it could sell out on pre-sales alone, I would think. So yeah, I'm considering a road trip up to Charlotte. Got friends up there as well. It's like I think there'll be a lot of road trips from Atlanta. We had to just rent a bus and have a keg. Can you do that? I don't know.
You have to have a separate driver in a separate compartment.
Yeah, I was to say, is it open container when it's at the very back?
Like a limousine can do it, right? So if you have a separated, you just need a wall with a door, and that's all you need.
Right.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Sounds
I really
good.
don't know.
All righty. Well, I am getting ready to share a highlight reel with y'all. We've had so many amazing guests this past year. It took me about a week to download all the shows and find a cool little tidbit in each one of them. But I found about 20 that I think are pretty darn interesting. So let me give that a try. Hold on just a minute. Hey, Ron, if you want to come in here real quick, go ahead and click that link and come on in and tell us about your show. I'm not the only one that does this. I have a friend that has a show that's similar in nature, and I thought I would have him come on in here and tell us a little bit about it. It's called ProgNaut, like an astronaut.
Nice.
An astronaut floating in the universe of prog.
There he is.
See, that's how you do these shows. You put your collection behind you. It's like, that guy knows a lot about music if he's got that many CDs.
I got something else too.
What you got there?
I gotta sit like this.
Okay. Do you know what that is? That is a autographed drum head. See, that's my name right there in the right-hand corner there, kind of about 4 o'clock. That's
awesome.
That's signed by the band Speechless that I was in 15 years ago. We did
I've got a signed Primus thing in the background. You have to look really closely to see the signatures, though. It'd be pretty hard to see.
Well, I got
We all
one.
have signed
I got
things?
one that says "Mother." No, I'm just kidding. Has a cross and a rose. Yeah.
So we got
So Ron,
two
how's
with
life
collections.
treating you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. You know, how do you say, going day to day, you know, this is actually kind of keeping me busy, like with yourself, keeping it, you know, doing these things. And I had only one mishap. For some reason, one of the guests was broadcasting from an iPhone, and they could only either get their audio or the video. And then once they got the audio, it was feedbacking. Like I've never heard a phone feedback.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up because I think I've had more trouble with phones than anything else.
Yeah.
Here's a couple things. It's like, for starters, plug your Ethernet straight into your computer because Wi-Fi is unpredictable, and you'll get these weird kind of almost robotic voice kind of thing happening when it's not quite coming through completely, and
Right.
kind of freezes or like slow motion kind of stuff. So plug it in, and what was the other thing you were talking about? The
video. For some reason, he couldn't get the video going through. And so what we did is, he told me he gets the link when I send it to him Messenger, and then he cuts and pastes it into his browser, and that's the problem with the iPhone. You got to email him the link.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know because
It goes direct right in to the, you know, no going into a browser. They just click right through.
Yeah. Well, I've had a few where they're on the phone and it just kind of like there's this weird kind of echoey stuff in the background, and it's almost like you want to go around the room and go, "Is that you? No, is that you? Stop that!" But I don't want to be a dick about it. So sometimes I just let it roll, and later I'm like, "Gosh, I wish I would have done something about that." So
Yeah.
thankfully, it
Tell 'em to
doesn't
mute.
happen very often, but it's usually when somebody's using a phone. But hey, we're glad to talk to people no matter how it happens.
Exactly.
Definitely. So you've had some cool guests on recently. I see you were chatting with Robert Berry from he played with Keith Emerson for a number of years, and Carl Palmer, and did a lot of other stuff. He played with Ambrosia for a bit, and I forget everybody he had on there. So when is your show on, Ron? And
I usually do it Sundays at 3 p.m. Eastern, mainly to not to clash with your show.
Oh, thank you.
Because I figure, gives everybody, okay, you can watch one night and another, easier that way.
Sure, and I usually go for the late night thing, and that's not going to work for everybody. It doesn't work for everybody I talk to. Anybody that's overseas, I have to do it in the afternoon anyway. So I appreciate that. And you have a YouTube page? What is it?
It's youtube.com/ProgNaut.
ProgNaut. Okay, like an astronaut. And our good friend Jim Ramsdale made you a groovy logo.
Oh yeah.
I like that. That turned out really nice. So
well, he was saying, we have to astronaut with stars, and I go, no, why not notes? Instead of the stars,
I think that was what really set it off. So yeah, kudos.
Well, he said he couldn't find an astronaut with headphones on. Only ones he saw were kind of childish looking.
It probably looked kind of silly. Yeah, almost like you're stretching them too far.
Yeah,
it's like you're not going to hear them through that helmet anyway.
Right.
You can actually nowadays they probably have the speakers already built into the helmet.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool to be like floating in space with your iPod and like going through shuffle? Like what song would you play if you're going to go walk in space for the first time? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
walking on the moon or something.
yeah. There you go.
It's like you're hopeful.
Or
You hope you make it to the moon.
or Space Oddity.
Right.
Well, there you go. Or something from 2001.
Oh yeah. And then just hope PAL doesn't come on your speaker.
It doesn't cut your tether, let you just float away. He's kind of an asshole for a computer.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the only thing that I've had an issue right now, I'm trying to get someone that's in Australia.
Okay, I did a chat with someone in Australia. The time difference is pretty wide.
Yeah,
It can be done.
13 and a half hours. So it's like, you want to get them at nighttime, you got to go in the morning or the opposite way. And so it's like kind of a difficult thing, but it can be worked out, especially if you do it on a weekend. Because
Yeah.
I got a quick thing to interrupt with. The next person that subscribes to your channel will be the 100th subscriber. So any takers on that are watching right now? I just subscribed and I'm number 99. So
cool.
Yeah.
Go for it if you want to.
And the thing is, I opened up that channel over 10 years ago, and I uploaded some things, and then they were just, I don't know, I just got rid of them, and then I started, before doing the thing I'm doing, I did reviews of movies, it's horror movies. So it's
Okay.
I did one October, I think it was in 2018, I believe it was. Just went through my movie library and felt I want to talk about movies that are seldomly talked about. Everybody, when you hear horror movies, that they, think Halloween, Friday the 13th, things like that. No one, I wanted to get really deep, find stuff I haven't heard or seldom.
Okay, so you had it already ready to go, and you just kind of shifted your focus to music.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know how sometimes music and movies kind of are nice little partners, and sometimes like
Sure. Yeah.
the Italian horror movies that had Goblin as their soundtrack.
Sure. Yeah.
And then what was it, the other one? Fabio.
Like Tangerine Dream did a bunch of soundtracks, so yeah, in perfect scenario, they meet and make each other better.
Oh yeah.
So very cool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and launch into a reel of highlights of interviews. If you guys want to stick around, you're welcome to, or if you want to hit it, it's your choice. Or if you want to stick around for a little while and slip out the back door when you get bored, you're welcome to do that. So,
all right.
I think I'm going to try the different view on here. Share screen. Yeah. All right, here we go. Here's our familiar theme song with from our band that Stephen and I are in, called Story of a Life, and this is a tune called Globe Trekker that we decided to take a little riff out of and use as our theme song. And that little riff has been heard by more people than any other part of our album many times over. But they're welcome to hear the rest. We have copies. If you want one, just let me know.
There's one interesting story where Miles is playing to Miles. It happened when he just started to play electronically. We were on a session in an old church off of Lexington Avenue and 30th Street, and WBGO was in Newark, was playing Quiet Nights, just around exactly at the time that Miles was testing a flanger and a pickup on his horn. The line on the pickup was not shielded, so therefore it became an antenna, and it started to bring in BGO of Miles playing Quiet Nights.
Oh, that's weird.
And he kind of said, "What the fuck is that? Where is that coming from? What is that? I know that." And he played to her, and we all started to play with him. I thought, "Oh, please, somebody record this." Someone said they got it, but I can't remember. Tio said, "That was amazing, man. Record." Never heard it. Never saw it. There was even the discussion as to one of the chord changes on the tune. Miles thought it was one change, and in the building at the time that they were recording was Gil Evans, and this voice, but no one said. I didn't know where it came. He said, "No, it wasn't a." It's like he said, "It's a G flat 9 and flat 5, G minor 9 flat 5," and a voice said, it was Gil, said, "You never played the flat 5, Dewey." Because Gil always called him Dewey, which is. And I was like, these voices, And back behind the drapery was Gil writing some material for something else. I don't know. Well, how it came to be was Jack DeJohnette said to me one night, interestingly enough, it was the week that Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. With his cast, all of that. Okay, that happened. I was playing with Junior Mann's jazz pianist at the top of the village gate. Okay, downstairs, Miles was working with Jack, Chick, I think Dave Holland, and Wayne. And Jack had decided that he was leaving the band for whatever the reason. Came upstairs and asked me if he could recommend me for the gig with Miles. And I said, "Yeah, I mean, what do I have to lose? The worst that can happen." He said, "No, I don't. It's okay." Well, he said, "Miles will come up and listen to you." And so, yeah, okay. So he did. And about a couple of days later, I got a call to come up to the studio in CBS. And before that, I went to his house. He helped me take my drums upstairs. I didn't have a whole lot of stuff to take. It was really light. My bass drum was a 14 by 12 inch bass drum.
Wow.
It was like 14 inches. Or no, 16? No, come on, let me get it right. 18 by 12 inch bass. Okay. 18 by 12. So it was like 12 was like this. It was an 18 inch bass drum. Because why? Because I could put it in a trap case. And my tom-toms, I had one 12-inch tom, and that stayed on a snare drum stand, and a 14-inch floor tom, and that's how I got on the bus and brought my drums to the gigs. It was the cheapest way. It cost me, like 30 cents to get on the bus and go downtown to work, or 50 cents, whatever it was. And so that was happening. Got up to Columbia, and I was more of an onlooker as far as I can remember than anything else.
All right. Well, that was a couple cool stories. Not all of these are that long, by the way. I tried to get a little more brief as I went. Next up, any of you know who this guy is? Come on, Ron, you're a prog head. Who is that? That is Percy Jones from Brand X, giving it the funk there. In case you don't know, Phil Collins played with Brand X initially. He was looking for kind of an outlet for more fusion kind of playing, and he decided to check these guys out. Originally, they asked Bill Bruford to be their drummer, but Bill wasn't available. I think he was playing with Gong. So anyhow, this is what Percy thought of playing with Phil Collins for the first time.
Well, my first impression was I liked his playing. We were having trouble finding someone who could play the sort of music that we wanted to do, And, that's why we called Bill Bruford, but he turned it down. He said he didn't want to spread himself too thin because he was already playing with might have been Gong at the time. He was playing with somebody else.
Yeah, he was with them briefly. Yeah.
Yeah, the first impression of Phil was I liked his playing. I mean, and it worked. It fitted in with what we were doing. So I was happy when he took the gig, you know. I got the sense that he was maybe a little frustrated in Genesis because, you know, he had some drum stuff that he wanted to get out there, which he probably couldn't do with them because of the style, but he could do it with us. I mean, we never really talked about that, but I got the sense that Brown X was an outlet for, you know, some of the things he wanted to do musically, which he couldn't do with Genesis. But I'm just surmising, you know.
And next up, this is Kevin Godley, who was the drummer and one of the 4 vocalists for 10cc. And he went on to front Godley and Cream. Basically, 10cc was a band of 4 distinct writers, 4 distinct singers that were kind of paired in 2 teams. Kevin Godley and Lowell Cream were the more avant-garde, adventurous side of 10cc, while Graham Goldman and Eric Stewart were the more pop, sensible kind of writers. And they kind of tempered each other in a good way for 4 great albums. But then things got a little predictable, you know, and once that happened, Kevin was out of there. So let's talk a bit about that real quick here.
It was when it did come along, it was self-inflicted, and it was, looking back on it, was kind of what created the backdrop for us ceasing to be, because we were pretty successful by the time we made our 4th album, which I believe was, what was it? How Dare You? Yeah, but I remember, I may have got the chronology wrong. I think it may have been How Dare You, where we did something that we'd never done before recording. We had a pre-production meeting, which means we all kind of sat around and started talking about what kind of album this was going to be, what we should do for this album, what we should write, and what we should record for this album. But prior to then, it had always been, an album was always the result of what we managed to achieve in the studio over a given period of time, and that was it. There was no contrivance or calculation about what kind of tracks would come out of those sessions. It was just what had come out of those sessions. That was the album. Now it was, well, we need one of those songs. We need a long, complex Godley and Cream one. We need a couple of funny ones. You know, it was like, it was starting to get to that point where we knew too much of who we were supposed to be, and what people expected of us. And it almost sounds a bit like we're a bunch of spoiled kids. But for myself and for Lord Cream, who thrived on not knowing and discovering, suddenly to know what we had to write, if we had to write something to a brief, then a big chunk of the enjoyment went out of it. Now, okay, you want a funny one, not in a funny mood, you know? Or you want a long one? No, how about 2 short ones? So there was something about working that. The album was actually very good. It turned out very good in the end. In terms of approaching it from that standpoint, it just didn't work for us. It was, I mean, I totally get it. I mean, you know, you are in a sense, you've created a career, and finally when you get to a place where you're very successful, obviously logic would suggest that you want that to carry on. And so from Eric and Graham's perspective, that's a natural thing to do. But we were strange beasts, and that's not what we really wanted to do. At the heart of it, we were prepared to run into brick walls, you know, that's not really on the cards for a successful band.
Next up, how many of you guys are familiar with the Mahavishnu Orchestra? Yeah. Pretty killer stuff. One of the premier fusion bands, you know, John McLaughlin had played with Miles on Bitches Brew. There we go. Bitches Brew is kind of like the fountainhead of fusion, and out of it flowed all these amazing bands: Mahavishnu Orchestra, Return to Forever, Weather Report. So we're catching up with Jerry Goodman, who is the violinist for the Mahavishnu Orchestra. And there you go. That's the stuff. That's right. Intermounting Flame, Birds of Fire, Lost Trident Sessions. Yeah, Jerry's on all those. And Jerry's like one of the first electric violinists to front a rock band. You know, that just didn't really happen before then. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and how he got talked into playing in the first place, because he didn't really want to play electric. He was actually the roadie for a band he was in, and they realized he was brilliant, so they retooled their entire sound and got him in the band.
That wanted me to play, and I had never played electric violin.
Am I right? You started as a roadie for them, or is that?
I did.
Wikipedia.
I did. I was a roadie for the Flock.
Okay. And then they were like, "Hey, our roadie plays amazing violin. We really should get him in here." Or
that's kind of what happened.
Okay.
Ricky Canoff talked me into doing it. He was the sax player and one of the leaders of the band.
Mm-hmm.
I was resistant. I have to admit, I didn't want to take that instrument and plug it into anything. I mean, it felt wrong to me, but I did. And I put a Tiamat pickup on it. On an acoustic
I had a
violin.
feeling that was the one. They were kind of the only game in town when it came to these kind of pickups back then, weren't they?
Until Marcus Berry started making violins with a pickup built into the bridge.
Okay.
And that changed the world for me.
Sure, absolutely. The sky's the limit. Yeah. So did you mostly just stick with 4-string, or did you ever try the 5-string like John Luke uses occasionally?
I'm playing a 6-string and mostly 5-string now.
Okay. And when you first plugged it in, what were you going through? Just like a Fender guitar amp or what?
I'm trying to think of that when we first got together. I think we immediately went and got new equipment because we everything changed for the Flock at the same time. And when I joined, they stopped doing what they had been doing musically. We started writing all new material, and it was pretty bizarre for that day and age.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what kind of gigs did you guys play? What was your typical gig, and what kind of bills did you wind up on with other bands?
We actually played with, what happened with that band is they changed management when I joined. Mm-hmm. And there was a guy named Aaron Russo who wanted to manage the band and guaranteed that we would have a major label contract within 2 months. He owned a club in Chicago called the Electric Theater. Okay. That eventually became the Kinetic Playground, big club in Chicago. He was a real crook. but once we signed with him, he got us a deal. We signed to Columbia Records within 2 months and started touring the world. So we did play huge festivals. We played the Rotterdam Festival at the same time that Woodstock was going on.
Oh wow!
Made a movie out of it. It's called Stamping Ground. Yeah, that was really something. And we played the Isle of Wight, and we played, we played all the Fillmores. And what Columbia was doing was sending out all the bands that were on their roster at the same time. So it was like Canned Heat and Jefferson Starship and It's a Beautiful Day and The Flock. And, they put them all out on the same tours.
Last in this reel, we're going to get a couple stories from keyboardist David Sancious. David Sancious is a brilliant fusion keyboard player who's played with some of the biggest names. He's played with Sting on 10 Summoner's Tales. He played with Bruce Springsteen on the first 3 albums they did, and even had a hand in naming the band the E Street Band. So we're going to talk a bit about that real quick here. I know you probably told this story many times, but the whole E Street name, and you could tell our viewers a bit about that. Am I right that it's the street that your mother's house was on? Is that right?
Yeah, that's where we lived, 1105 E Street. I think what one reason why he might have called it that, when they used to come in my neighborhood, the few times that my mom let us rehearse in the house, either in the basement or in the garage, that my neighborhood was like a truly integrated neighborhood of the time. We're talking about, I was born in 53. So let's say, early 60s, I'm like 10 years old. I'm already playing music. I'm already doing stuff. But here was the makeup of my neighborhood. I was what we call middle class. We weren't lower middle class. We weren't upper middle class. We were like middle class family. Okay. So here's, in this one block of East Street, is our family, African-American family. Right next to us is a white Jewish family, mother and father, both school teachers. Across the street from us was a black family. The wife was a nurse and the husband was a landscaper. On the other side of our house, the house in the corner, another black family. Both of the parents were school teachers. And on the other side of the street, across from the other folks, was the rabbi of a white family. He was the rabbi of the town. Across from them was a white family, and they were lawyers. And the synagogue was right around the corner from our house. It was like in the middle of the next block around the corner. And so there was a mixture of African Americans, Caucasians, Italian people. But the thing I think he just could visually see about it and maybe appreciate it was everybody was getting along. There was no big aggravation. But I remember the night where he sort of got fixated. He kept saying it over and over, because we're coming back from a gig in Texas, something, and it's the last leg of the thing. So now we're in a car. I think they're dropping me off. I think they dropped me off first, because back those days I didn't have a car. I didn't know how to drive. I didn't get a license until I was like 20 or something. It was crazy. And so he goes, we gotta think of a name. And people were throwing out crazy kind of nonsense names. I remember Vinny Lopez suggested Angel's Underwear. And I said, Vinny, if we're in Angel's Underwear, I can't be in this band. I can't tell my family I'm in a band called Angel's Underwear. It was like joking and everything. So some ideas bandied about and nothing happened. And then there were these sort of markers, these white kind of obelisk looking thing, markers on every corner that told you where you were. And we were in between 11th and 12th. So I was on East Street in between 11th and 12th Avenue. So we turned the corner, it's like early in the morning, and I don't know, the way the light just caught it, or I don't know, but he just kept saying, wow, East Street, wow, East Street band. And maybe the next day or something, later, the next time we got together for rehearsal, he just said, yeah, this is what we're gonna call it. Yeah.
I want to talk a bit about the whole prog fusion thing for a minute, because what I love about the Tone albums is they straddle this line somewhere between Return to Forever and Yes. And I was just wondering, how big of a fan you were of that, all that kind of stuff back in the day.
Huge fans of both of those bands you mentioned. A big Yes fan, huge. Return to Forever as well. I mean, that's two of my. That was such I think a unique and special time in music history, that whole era. Let's say if we really go back to say ELP, so Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Sure.
In early Gentle Giant. When that music started to become commercially successful, there was a period there where they were not just doing that, but they were selling records, they were filling arenas,
sure.
Stadiums, they're selling tickets, making money. And here comes bands like Mahavishnu Orchestra. Same thing, man. Very successful commercially. There was a period, it was like a bubble of a thing. Weather Report, playing the biggest venues and everything. So what was magical about it to me was it was this whole, and I don't think you can back up in recorded musical history and find a similar period where all these elements came together and were combined in a seamless way. For instance, the European classical tradition harmonically, the Afro-Cuban rhythmic tradition, right, is in there. The American jazz harmonic take creation is in there, and it's all and then, classical music is in there. Classical music, whoever heard a fugue with a rock beat?
Right.
Nobody ever did that, but when you heard it, to me, that's still one of the most exciting things, to hear classical harmony with a funky beat behind it. That drives me crazy. And it's, so again, that was what's special about it. And then it just became more of a thing that jazz element came in and people were playing jazz and rock. And it was a lot of things where musicians were not so compartmentalized. There were a lot of jazz players who really interested in rock and wanted to check it out and play it and learn how to play it. A lot of rock musicians who weren't so familiar with jazz wanted to get familiar with it and do it. So it was a great coming together of all these musical elements, right? Which is, I mean, to this day, you know, people are still writing like that. I kind of can't help but write like that. But my writing is like, it's not going to show up. Like I'm not going to do 8 albums that sound like true stories. As much as I love true stories and as much as that means to me and what I was trying to do, all my elements, my influence are jazz, classical, R&B, you know, and folk and all kinds of stuff. But it'll come out in its own kind of way.
All right. So that's the end of our first highlight reel. It was cool to hear David Sancious kind of talk about the fusion and prog worlds kind of colliding back in the early 70s. And you know who else he played with? Can you guys name somebody besides Sting and Bruce Springsteen that he played with?
I'm going to see if I can remember correctly from what you said. Maybe, did he play with Santana?
I don't
Was that
think
not him?
so. But he played with Peter Gabriel.
Peter Gabriel? Okay.
Yeah.
I got him confused with another one of your guests then, I guess.
Yeah. Very cool. So I want to say hi to everybody in the chat room. If you got any questions or any requests or whatever, let us know. I'm keeping an eye on it. Good to see everybody. Hey, Jerry. Hey, Cone. Hey, Steve and Phoenix Ray. Good to see you, brother. Hey, Janie. How you doing? Hey, Brian. Appreciate y'all dropping by on a Monday night for our best of look back at a year's worth of interviews with who's who of progressive rock and fusion. Some pop in there as well. Yeah. So did you guys learn anything from those in the past 30 minutes?
I think I probably learned the most out of all of you.
And again, thank you all for dropping by and helping us celebrate our birthday today. It's exactly 1 year since our first episode, and we did 85 episodes this past year. And I want to thank you all for tuning in and checking them out and making them successful. And I want to thank all my guests for taking the time to come and chat. It's been great. So anyway, here's another highlight reel we're going to go with. On this particular highlight reel, we're going to get started with Chad Wackerman talking about Alan Holdsworth and kind of the audience that he attracted, the way he kind of disguised some of his gear so people couldn't steal his sound per se, as if having the right delay was going to make you sound like Alan Holdsworth. Yeah, like Dream On. Any Alan stories come to mind that our viewers might get a kick out of hearing?
Well, he was I think in particular, just he was a real mad scientist. Like he was funny too, because people always thought that if they copied his gear, like this isn't directly about Alan, but it kind of is. So my sister-in-law in London, you know, she's not a fusion fan or anything, and a friend of hers had never seen a fusion band ever. And I don't really consider Alan's band a fusion band either, but it gets put in that category. Because a lot of fusion, what's called fusion music, I don't care for. I don't like the stuff gets cluttery when people overplay and they play on top of each other, and it's kind of an athletic thing.
Sure.
Alan's music, I think, is really flowing. It's really different, really open and beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
But anyway, she was saying, so, and she had seen the band before, and she told her friends, so, because he's going, well, what happens? What do they do? Well, okay, there's no singing. No singing, okay. So, no, it's just guitar, bass, and drums. And then they play the show, and then they'll probably do an encore. They'll come out, and they'll play the last encore, and then they leave. And then all these men come up to the stage, and they stare at the equipment. Just absolutely true.
Oh, I get it.
So it's like all these guitar players have thought for years that it's the gear that's making the sound. It's if I have that amp, and Alan, being Alan, he would disguise all this stuff anyway. Like he would take rack unit stuff apart and he'd rebox it in his own box and with knobs with no signage on it, but just knobs, and he put like a Campagnolo bicycle sticker on the thing. I was like, what's the Campagnolo thing with all these knobs? And
you can imagine the rabbit holes that people went down looking at that stuff.
Oh yeah, and even amps. Like he'd often like not use the amp that you're seeing. You know, he'd be using this digital amp that was looking like all of his multi effects units, but that was actually the amp, but it was going to the power amp section of the amplifier, not the head. So like he was like, yeah, I don't like the sound of the head.
That's like a decoy.
But everybody's seeing this. It's okay.
Okay, next up, we're going to talk with Andy West from the Dixie Dregs about Steve Morse's compositional style, because nobody writes music like Steve Morse. And, he's in the league of shredders, but compositionally, he's miles above them as far as I'm concerned. And I was kind of curious where a lot of his inspiration came from. And Andy kind of filled me in on it. And that really sets Steve apart from his peers. You know, everybody kind of can lump him in that kind of dexterous ballpark with Satriani and all those guys, but none of them come close to the compositional caliber that Steve Morse has. You know,
yeah. It's a different thing, you know. I mean,
it's a different ball game, totally.
Yeah.
You know, it's more like a classical composer.
Yeah,
not just some rock guitar
I love learning that stuff, because there were always he would compose for us like we were his orchestra. You know, I mean, it's like, okay, I've got these parts and these kinds of things, and you know, this is something that people don't understand. I mean, the way that you learn things now is completely different. You know, we didn't even have cassette recorders then.
Right. It was
literally, we'd get in a room together, and he would have this stuff in his head. And he'd say, okay, try this. And we'd learn section by section. And then as we'd put stuff together, if it didn't sound like he wanted it, he would change it. And we were all kind of amazed. I mean, that is another thing that made the band work, is that we all kind of united behind his music. I mean, it was pretty amazing.
All right. Well, Stephen, next up, you want to tell them who this is?
So yes, Adam Niddy is one of my biggest inspirations as a bass player. And the way I found out about him was he used to teach at Atlanta Institute of Music, and I was going to go there for that reason and ended up not going there because he stopped teaching there and moved to Nashville to pursue much bigger things that he was doing. And so he's a very fusion, progressive rock, all that kind of stuff, bass player. But of course, when he went up to Nashville, he became a side person for a lot of different artists like Kenny Loggins, and I believe he did a tour with maybe like Kelly Clarkson or somebody else, but he's done a lot of like just work like that, in addition to all the really cool jazz fusion stuff that he does. And his last album was more progressive rock. But
what was
he
that
inspired
called?
me to buy my Warrior 6-string bass.
Yeah, what was that? What was that new album called? I'm trying to remember.
I had World. Something about World is Loud, maybe?
The World is Loud. That's right. Yeah, Adam Nitty's The World is Loud. Yeah, in this clip, we talk a bit about him playing with yacht rock king Michael McDonald. So, and you know, he also played with Kenny Loggins, and I think there was a time when he like did double duty. And let's see that. So, how did you come to play with Michael? Was it kind of around the same time, or?
Well, it was exactly that story I was telling earlier.
You had to prep for both of them. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You got to be in both at the same time.
Yeah. It was an interesting first night, but it was a night to remember for sure.
Yeah, it's such great sophisticated music, and Kenny's as well. You know, a lot of people are asked. They're like, "I love Steely Dan. What's like Steely Dan?" And it's like, it's a pretty short list. But I'd have to say anything Michael McDonald did with the Doobies or without is probably about as close as you're going to. And, he worked with those guys, but you can't help but think that he didn't learn all those chords just playing pretzel logic with them. I would like to.
Right. Yeah, there is, again, like the harmonic depth of that stuff is amazing. And, you know, those two vocalists in particular, I mean, just the part of the genius is how the melody is interwoven with that in ways that just sound like they couldn't be any other way. I mean, it's a gift to be able to write music that way.
Next up, we have Pat and Deborah Mastalato. Pat is the drummer from King Crimson and has been with them since the mid-90s. He originally was in the double trio with Bill Bruford, and then manned the drum chair alone for the next decade on the albums The Power to Believe and The Construction of Light. And now there's like a super Crimson, an 8-man band, sometimes 7. And there are 3 drummers, and Pat is one of the 3, along with Gavin Harrison and Jeremy Stacy. So, and if you haven't seen King Crimson live in the last 5 or 6 or 7 years, you're really missing out, because it's stunning. And the way the drums are orchestrated together, it's like they finish each other's sentences. And I've never seen anybody do that before. So anyhow, they get to play a lot of amazing venues, and recently Crimson got to play at Pompeii, probably the first rock band to play there. Pink Floyd played there, and filmed the movie Live at Pompeii, but there really wasn't an audience there. David Gilmour went back about 3 or 4 years ago and played there for the first time since anybody had set foot in there and played with Pink Floyd. And like a few months later, they're like, okay, well, let's have some more shows at Pompeii. And they invited King Crimson. So this is a little bit about what it was like playing at that amazing arena.
We loved Pompeii. We liked the city too.
Oh, I can imagine.
Staying in Naples, and we stayed in Naples like one night. Then we came down to Pompeii and did the tour, and we loved the little place we were in, and we just stayed in Pompeii.
We didn't go back with the band.
We didn't go back to Naples.
The band hotel was in Naples for just an hour or more, maybe. I think we only played one night. But after the show, when everybody got on the bus to go back to the hotel in Naples, we said, we'll stay here at the backstage so we can wake up and see Naples. Pompeii, sorry.
And it's something to see.
So we had the morning really hot, even 8 a.m. or whenever we got up, baking hot.
Yeah.
And then the gig that's a magic gig, man. I mean, that's a special
They
place.
have a photo that I think is in the album where they walk through the
gladiators,
where the gladiators walk through to get to the arena, and they've got the guys standing there, and they shot a picture of it. And Pat's always been a big fan of like Spartacus, so the whole idea of going into the arena, but here he was doing it. Yeah, it was intense and profound.
I bet it was. Next up, one of my favorite guitarists, Steve Morse. Had a chance to chat with him a few months back about the Dixie Dregs and, of course, playing with Deep Purple and Kansas. What you might not know is Steve has been a pilot most of his adult life and has basically a little airport at his house, a little airstrip, and has quite a collection of different kind of planes. So I asked him if, he just goes up and nabs a quickie, at the end of the day to relax. And this is what he had to say.
Do you ever just fly for your own enjoyment? Just at the end of a long day, just go up for a quickie?
Well, that's oddly, I mean, I don't know if you're joking or not, but I do it every day.
Yeah, I figured if you have your own plane, why not, So I was curious how big part of it is part of your routine on a daily basis or what?
Yeah, I'd like a traveling plane, but for very little money, you can get what they call an SLA, LSA, sorry, light sport aircraft. And they're lightweight, teeny tiny little engines, could be 80 horse or 100 horse, that you could use hardly any gas at all and just go up and just putt around. And my everyday plane like that is glass doors on each side.
Oh yeah.
So you can see straight down and just observe the world.
You've been up there, haven't you, Bill?
I've been in that. I have a fear of heights, and
Steve very, very kindly said, well, what plane would you like to go up in? And I looked at this transparent plane and I was like, that one.
Is that the one that Wonder Woman had? The invisible plane?
Yeah, pretty much. But ask them about the fighter jet.
The fighter jet. You got one of those back there too?
It was an ex-military attack trainer. So, and a twin-engine jet. So it's cool, very cool. But I only had it for about 6 years. And I got rid of it because I couldn't really keep it at home because it burned the grass on the runway. And the runway was a little too short to be technically correct. And up where I was keeping it, where John Travolta now lives, they were cleaning everybody out to make it into a for sale place. And so I lost my place there. So I went to the main municipal airport, and they just didn't like me working on the jet at all. I just said, this isn't worth it. So back to the little planes. It was something I knew I wanted to do and experience for part of my life. And really, ever since I read about John Travolta buying a vampire jet when he was just hit his stride to making money. So I just thought it's something you have to experience.
Next up, we're going to talk with Steve Hackett. He's an amazing electric guitarist, and that's probably what he plays the most. But he's also a fantastic classical guitarist. And I suggested to him that, he could have gone a different path and just been a classical guitarist in an orchestra, or, kind of Segovia, that kind of person. And he just happened to see Segovia. So let's see what he had to say about that. So your classical playing goes back pretty far, and your technique is so fluent and articulate. I just love it. I've said before that I think you could have just made a career as a symphonic classical guitarist a la Segovia had you chosen a different career path.
Well, I let's put it this way. I'm hugely indebted to Segovia. I only ever saw him once live. And I saw him at the Royal Festival Hall. I played there myself years later. But I assumed that because he was getting on stage, and at that point he would have been either in his 70s or his 80s, but as the great man came on stage, I assumed that the whole audience would stand up and give him standing ovation. But it being a classical crowd, midweek, London, they all just sort of polite ripple of applause,
right.
Like a sort of well-held, local cricket match. Mm-hmm. But I stood up, and I was the only one in the audience who stood up. I was up in the balcony, and our eyes met for just 1 second, and that's the only physical contact I had with him. I probably could have met him because I knew the guy was the promoter, but I was kind of shy and in awe of him.
Yeah. What do you say?
What would I say? I'm a rock guitarist. It would be past. But I love classical guitar. What can I tell you?
How far back does it go for you? I mean, we all know Horizons was probably the first instance of it being on a record.
Yeah, it goes back to when I was 15 in 1965. I heard Segovia playing Bach on record. One side was Segovia, the other side was Bach played on the harpsichord.
Okay.
And I loved both sides. The Italian concerto played on harpsichord, monumental piece of keyboard work.
Oh yeah.
But there didn't seem to be any difference to me that what the fretboard was capable of and what the keyboard managed to do. In the right player's hands, there seemed to be no limit.
Very true.
Some of these pieces I'd heard played on keyboard, on violin, on cello. Bach's music seems to be indifferent to whatever instrument it's played on. That's it. It's yeah. He's not called the father of Western music for nothing.
He's got that right. So how you guys doing?
Good.
Hanging in there?
Hanging in there.
Hope this is proving to be interesting. It's really tough to go just grab one little section, there's so many, out of a 2-hour interview, there's so many options there. Sometimes it's really hard to decide. So I hope I picked some slightly interesting stories. I like to think these were good ones. Any of you familiar with a 90s prog band called Porcupine Tree? Yeah, okay. Well, next we're going to chat with their bass player, Colin Edwin, about the band kind of calling it quits and what was behind all of that. So when Porcupine Tree dissolved, did you see it coming? Was there any inkling that Stephen wanted to go solo, or was it a surprise?
Well, when we all took a decision to stop for a while because it got a bit unhealthy. It was quite a trying time for me because at the time my children were very young. So I was going on tour for weeks and weeks with a really young family, which isn't ideal.
No.
It was putting a bit of a strain. And we were touring a lot. So every album, there's a year and a half where you're touring the record, and then you've got to make the next one. And I think I got to the point where we'd more or less run out of things to say to each other. So the last tour was quite, the last touring album period, it was just like we were ready for a break. Everyone was exhausted, we'd worked really hard. We'd gone all over the world. I was always enthusiastic about doing gigs. And, from my point of view, it was great. Even though I had the family situation, I was the only parent at the time. It was quite tough, but we were all ready for it, I think. We were all ready. So we sort of agreed to take a year off. And then, of course, a year has turned into 10 years.
Right.
But, everyone just got into different things. And then there's sort of not much reason, in a way, to come back because you've done it. You've said what you have to say with those people.
Yeah, so simple enough. I don't think Stephen was itching to go solo that much at the moment. I think they were just ready for a break, and out of that came something new. So next up, interesting trio that made one record. That's an instrumental one that is really a high water mark for all three. And, this is, of course, Alan White from Yes, Tony Levin from King Crimson, and David Torn, who is a very unique guitarist, kind of in the school of Robert Fripp and Adrian Belew, these kind of Salvador Dali's of guitar. David's one of those as well, definitely. Yeah. So we're going to talk a bit about, first we're going to talk with Alan White about that Union album we were talking about earlier. Then we're going to talk with we're going to talk with David Torn about playing with Jeff Beck and taking some of Jeff's songs and twisting them and chopping them up and making them completely different. And we will talk about Tony Levin playing with Buddy Rich, and wrap it up with Alan White's thoughts on Yoko Ono's vocal improvisations. You might remember that before Alan was in Yes, he played with John Lennon in the Plastic Ono Band. So cool stories abound. So check this out. Alan, how do you feel about Union all these years later?
Well, I did the tour, and
tour was amazing.
I call it the Onion Tour, by the way. Union.
Well, no more tears, man. That live.
There were so many people on stage, and
yeah,
I really enjoyed working with Bill on that. We were both very compromising and about each other's style on playing Yes music, and we talked a lot about it in the beginning and decided which one was right for the right guy, and we allocated after that. But it ended up, I did a lot of the kind of meat and potato stuff, and
Bill played a lot of electronic percussion on the top.
Yeah, that's how Bill put it. He said he was the hollandaise sauce, and you were
Yeah.
the meat and potatoes.
Well, you could put it like that, I guess. All I remember is seeing him standing, playing all the electronics, and he back-faced to me on stage because it was a circular stage. And I just saw his arse reeling all night. His butt was just going. And I said, Bill, can you please stop doing that? It puts me off.
Getting into the groove, you know.
Bill was a great guy. I get on really well with him. And
When did you first met Bill, you know, when he was in Yes? Did you see him much after you joined Yes in the 70s?
not really, not for a while, but then he came to gigs a couple of years later. He started coming to gigs, and we chatted a lot, you know, became good friends.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was great to see you both on stage together. That was, you know, a one-of-a-kind tour, and I'm so glad I was old enough to see it. Even I wanted to ask you a bit about playing and working with Jeff Beck and how you came to work with him. He did a series of kind of techno-inspired albums back in the 90s, and you were on the third one, the self-titled Jeff album. And one of my favorite tracks on there is a tune called Plan B. I was wondering if you could tell me a bit about how that was put together, because it seems like Jeff kind of sent you various licks and then you assembled them into something greater. Is that right?
Well, it's sort of like that. He sent me a tune, but that he was unhappy with. So they sent me a whole multi-track, and he said basically he had just called one day, or I can't remember. I think his manager's name was Ralph at that time. The old managers, can't remember the dude's name, but Jeff called and said, "I've got this record. I'm gonna throw it away. They really want me to try to make this into a record, and I've got at least 3 tunes that I don't like, and I don't know what to do with them. And you know, we're going to send them to you, and you tell me what you think, and then I'll say, if you think you can do something with them, I'll send you the multi-tracks." So he sent me 3, and I said, "Yeah, I'd do all of these, sure. I'd try them all on," and that was it. And he just handed me the multi-track. So I wrote intros and outros and breakdowns. I changed some chord things. I took the rhythm tracks and I would say I modified them deeply. That's probably an understatement. I really fucked them up because there was stuff there. I knew what he didn't like. He told me what he didn't like. It was it wasn't super complicated. It was just, I don't like this because it's too square. I don't like this because it's too square. Can you do anything electronic anywhere? And I had the opportunity to do that. So that's what went down. Yeah.
I'm wondering, were you familiar with with Yoko's vocal improv style, and were you surprised when she broke into it?
Yeah, I actually recorded on Yoko's live album, Fly, in the studio. And we did it at the studio in London. And we recorded Hare Krishna in the same place. I remember recording, and they were all out playing the guitars in the studio, and I was in a booth, and I had the headphones on, and we're going through drum checks and all that kind of stuff. And then I kept saying to the engineer, I said, I think there's a feedback coming from somewhere. And John said, "No, it's Yoko in a bag on the floor over there." She was just...
My friend Frank actually asked this the last time. You know, we had Stickman on a few weeks ago. Appreciate you coming back again, Tony. And he asked this last time and I missed it. So this time I'm definitely going to ask. Can you ask Tony about playing with Buddy Rich? I saw his name on the Tough Dude LP.
Yes, I was called in. I know it was in 1984, because the album was called Roar of 84. I knew all about the Buddy's playing, of course. I had been seeing the band whenever they played in Rochester. A good friend of mine had been his bass player, Joel DeBartolo, passed away, sadly, great bass player from Buffalo, had played with him and told me what it was like. And famously, there are so many famous stories about Buddy. When Buddy tuned his drums, he would turn to the bass player and say, "Give me an A," and Joel from Buffalo said, "A," and got fired immediately.
Out of here.
Yeah, he learned that if he didn't already know that Buddy wants to be the one doing the lines, not have them go the other way. He got rehired and played with Buddy for quite a while. So I knew kind of what it was like. It was an amazing experience. We played a few nights with the big band in a club, and I got to experience the energy of playing with Buddy. It was great. And then there were 2 days booked for the album. For those who don't know, probably most people don't know, Buddy is famous for being a great jazz drummer, of course, but quite famous for firing guys in his band and for having a volatile temper. Okay, so I'm playing with him, and it's going fine. And then we go in the studio for the first day, and about an hour into the session, he gets really angry at the whole band and fires the whole band. Said, "Session's off, you guys are playing terrible." And I kind of moped as I packed up my bass. I was at that time a studio bass player. I wasn't in his band. I was not on the road with him like the other guys, but I wasn't used to such things happening. So I was sad. And I mentioned it to another guy. He said, "Oh, don't worry. They'll call us in the morning. The manager will call us and hire us back, and we'll do the album in one day," which is exactly what happened.
Well, there's some pretty funny stories there.
What is it about jazz and just people getting away with like having the biggest tempers ever? You know, I just got to say that I just noticed that goes hand in hand with band leaders. I shouldn't say just like jazz general, the big band leaders are kind of known for that, not just Buddy.
No, Buddy Rich is just one of the most famous ones. One of the most famous tempers in jazz. Again, thank you all for tuning in for our first anniversary episode. I'm hanging out with Stephen, Ron, and Anthony, and we are watching some highlights from the past year, or really about the past 6 months. We had a kind of year in review episode at the end of 2020, which is on our YouTube page at /Soul Night Live. Swing by and subscribe if you have yet to. And yeah, if you go back to the shows in December, Stephen and I did a show just about the highlights up to that point. So if you're missing anybody that you remember me talking to, check out that episode because there's a highlight reel in that one as well. This is kind of all the stuff that's happened since the first of the year, pretty much. It's been a pretty exciting and busy year so far. I've probably done 20 good interviews since the year started, maybe more. Got more in the waiting in the wings, as they say. So anyhow, move on to this last reel of highlights. And this last stretch here, we're going to look at some memories from the likes of a very first episode we did, chatting with my friend Jake Livgren, who's the nephew of Carrie Livgren, who was the principal writer in Kansas back in the 70s and wrote Dust in the Wind and Carry On Wayward Son, not all that kind of stuff. And we're going to talk about how he came to sing on a lot of Carrie's solo material. Like, Jake's a fantastic singer, and he's sung backup on some Kansas records, and he's also done some really cool stuff, most recently with a group called Legacy Pilots that includes Jordan Rudess from Dream Theater, Todd Zuckerman from Styx on drums. It's a mixture of different talents. So yeah, check out the Legacy Pilots album with Jake Livgren. It's really cool stuff. And then after that, we will chat with a guy that we know pretty well down here in Atlanta, Jeff Sipe, who is the drummer from the Aquarium Rescue Unit and other local fusion groups. And then we're going to chat with Jellyfish keyboardist Roger Joseph Manning Jr. We're both a couple big power pop fans, and we talked about Squeeze and Elvis Costello for a few minutes. Then Mike Keneally is going to drop in. He's going to play a bit of a Zappa tune for us that is absolutely impossible. And he switches between keyboards and guitar. It's really cool. And then to wrap it up, we will talk with one of the greatest techs in the business. His name is Thomas Nordig, and he is teched for Steve Vai, Frank Zappa. I want to say maybe Al Di Meola, a lot of different people. And he's got a cool story about hanging out with David Lee Roth. So go ahead and get this reel going here. And again, thank you all for coming and hanging out on a Monday night to reminisce with us. You know, I should probably do a highlight reel more often, but again, it's really hard for me to pick just one thing out of a big interview and say, oh, this is the best thing above everything else, because it's never really like that. It's more like there's lots of cool stuff and it's really hard to pick. So I hope you enjoy the choices I made here. I'm going to play that song one more time. You know the song, Stephen. That's it.
Spar with one hand and do this with the other.
Theme song. The Globe Trekker. All right.
Oh, the history of working with Carrie. So we had went down summer before sophomore year of high school to visit Carrie and Vicki in Covington, Georgia, and had mentioned that I was getting more and more active in singing. And he said, oh, yeah, really? Well, maybe you'd like to check out the studio and, sing something on my album I'm working on. And I was like, what are you talking about? So he had taken me down to the studio before, but I guess at that age I was sort of peaking at my interest in such things. And so we went down and he played me some of the tracks that were kind of ready for some background vocals and things. And I think I want to say the first song I ever sang on for Carrie was One Dark World from When Things Get Electric. And it was probably 2 to 2.5 years before it actually finally came out. In between that incident and the album coming out, he moved to Topeka, and I worked on that album a lot more with him in Topeka for the next couple of years. But having that experience of being behind that mic and hearing my voice in the phones and the amazing music, and that was it. I was like, I got to do this.
All right, next we're going to hear from Jeff Sipe from the Aquarium Rescue Unit.
6th grade, I started playing drums. And then 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, I was in Frankfurt, Germany, in the band. And then when I came to the States, 14 years old, starting high school, I met a bass player named Emmett Ingersoll. He invited me over, and we listened to Bitches Brew. Oh. And I heard American electric jazz for the first time. And that was a game changer because the drums were really active. It was a mixture of jazz and progressive rock. Hard-hitting, fast stuff, which is exciting for a young guy. And,
very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So all roads lead to from Bitches Brew. I started noticing the players on that record had their own records, and their guys had their own records. So it just fractaled out.
Oh yeah, I mean, just that's kind of like the what's the word I want to use? The fountainhead. Of fusion. You start there and check out everybody on that record, and you have a pretty good idea.
Yeah. And so I went out from there and forward from there, and then I decided to go back from there. And Miles worked with Charlie Parker and some of the early bebop guys. So that moving to America as a 14-year-old, listening to music, having a drum set, and being allowed to practice. Mom and Dad, they supported me, so I feel real lucky. I was in a safe environment, great friends, nice neighborhood. I was allowed to play and practice and go out and play with friends, and it was a real free time. So I feel blessed. It was real fortunate.
All right, and next up we're going to chat with Roger Joseph Manning Jr. from Jellyfish and the Licorice Quartet more recently about some British pop that we both really like. I've been on a Squeeze kick lately. You listen to them much?
They are obviously certain periods more than others, but they're rarely brought up in interviews. They are as big an influence on me as anything.
Oh man, I'd love to talk about them for just a minute if we could, because this year, I picked up about 5 of their albums, and I got to say, Glenn Tilbrook is a brilliant lead guitarist. I
know. And that's not what he's known for.
Can you think of a better, more perfect guitar solo? I mean, he's such a killer friggin' singer too. He's the total package, He's just amazing.
Well, yeah, not obviously him. He's the mouthpiece of the group, but him teaming up with Chris and the incredible lyrics that happen there, and then what they do with their voices and octaves.
Yeah, that's kind of unusual. I mean, most people wouldn't go for octaves.
Oh man, no, it's completely, in a very easy way, they created the sound of Squeeze.
Yeah,
it's like, well, let's just let Chris do it. He has the higher, more traditional blue-eyed soul vocal sound. But there's a whole period where the octaves is the vocal sound, and then they always surrounded themselves with such a great band too.
Yeah,
there's that period. They have so many great periods, but I was so pleasantly surprised by the period. Paul Carrick's in the band briefly.
Yeah, that's a East Side Story. That
correct.
Album, one of their.
And then I think the album right after that called Cosi Fan Tutti Frutti.
Well, actually, there's one in between it, and I have it right here. It's called Sweets from a Stranger, which
right. Yep. Well, that has many hits on it as well.
Yeah, this is kind of falls between the cracks. Cosi Fan Tutti, though, is one of my favorites. There's just the way the chord progressions are on.
Oh my God!
Gets me, man.
That the songwriting on that just exactly. For some reason, that resonates at a deeper. It's no different than Elvis Costello's Imperial Bedroom album.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I like Elvis's whole catalog, but for some reason, the Imperial Bedroom album just slam dunks for me the whole time and takes me into this world that I never want to leave. And it's the Attractions, the same band that's on most of those great records, and they're one of the greatest bands ever to exist in rock, in my opinion.
Oh,
and Squeeze is similar that way.
Next up, we're gonna have a piece of what turned out to be my most popular video by a wide margin. This was a Frank Zappa themed episode with my friend Mike Keneally, who played with Frank in 1988. And we got a hold of 3 of his techs that he worked with in the late 80s. Bob Rice, who was his synclavier tech. He's the guy that created the sounds that you heard on albums like Jazz from Hell. Because it's all, it's a sampler basically. And a sampler is only as good as the things you sample. And Bob made some amazing samples of, real orchestral instruments and other things. So, yeah. And also we're joined by Merle Saunders Jr. You might know his father. He's well associated with the Grateful Dead. And Merle was a tech for Michael Jackson on the Bad tour. And Frank as well. So they were all kind of there behind the scenes when Mike was in the band. And also we're joined by Thomas Nordig, who is like an amazing, legendary tech above them all. I mean, all the guys were just like amazed to sit back and listen to Thomas tell his tales. So first we're going to listen to Mike play a piece of a tune from Zappa called The Alien Orifice, which is a very technically demanding piece of music. And then we'll hear from Thomas, and we'll wrap up our highlights.
The transition from guitar to keyboard and back again is kind of crazy. And there's one line I can't play because I have to switch from one instrument to the other. So right now I guess I'll have to sing it.
Got it. Oh, that's awesome. Thomas, welcome.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Last but not least.
Well, glad we got you in here. I was afraid you were stuck in the ether. So thank you.
I was stuck at David Lee Roth's house. That's what it would have been.
There you go.
Yeah, I was. Yep. Okay,
Oh, you're at David Lee Roth's house? That's what's going on? Okay.
Well, I've been there like since election day, helping the man in his Monte Carlo style Mediterranean Pasadena 3.5 acre estate, the biggest thing I've ever been on. It's not Kubrick, not whatever. You could not script it, is what I'm saying.
Has he got a studio on the premises?
Well, he's got
Tom to
some,
come and hang out.
yeah, he's got some audio situation he does have, yes. He's an artist, he paints stuff. And then
Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah. And the house is just, you see a door, you open it, there's a room with something in or not. And then there's 2 doors in that room. They're going to 2 other rooms where there's another 2 doors. It doesn't end. It's amazing, I must say. I mean, it took me 74 years or 5, I should say, now, to get that and to be on the Kiss tour last year. That was like, whoa.
Oh, wow.
Never seen Kiss before. And that was pretty, I must say, if the word rock star has any meaning, it's them. The hard work, 16 trucks, 9 buses, 60 crew, 120 stations. I don't know how it all happened every day, but I was impressed.
And that is the end of our highlights. So I hope you guys enjoyed those. I've got dozens more. You just need to drop by our YouTube page, /SOAL, SOAL, Night Live, and subscribe. And you can see 85 different episodes. And most of them average about 2 hours. So there's hundreds of hours of stuff to watch.
What's the longest one you had?
I think the Echolin ran around 3 hours because we really went pretty deep. I had Chris and Ray on, and Ray was kind enough to go into detail about a lot of the lyrics he wrote. And there was pretty interesting stuff. And we basically talked about every album. So, yeah. And it didn't really feel like 3 hours at the time. It felt about like 2 or something. But sometimes you just get rolling, and the next thing you know, the time has flown by. And sometimes you feel like you got everything covered. And other times it's like, damn, I didn't even get to half my stuff, So sometimes you get to do a part 2. There's been a few of those that have happened, including like Billy Cobham coming up really soon. So excited to talk.
I think I have a few of them that I kind of like to revisit, for a part 2.
Yeah, well, hang in there, Ron. It took me probably 20 episodes to kind of get my sea legs, so to speak. You know what I mean? It's like I didn't really. I was kind of nervous about doing one alone for a number of episodes. I was like, I wanted Steven or somebody to come along and kind of help me out, but I realized pretty quickly that
gigs.
Steven started coming out. He wasn't around, and it was just like, I had to learn how to do it all on my own. It's like there's a bit of juggling to do, but after you've done 20 or 25 of these, you get it down to a kind of a certain groove. And it gets easier. And there's still days, I don't know, some days I feel like I'm quicker on the uptake than others. It just kind of depends. The pollen down here has been awful this year. Did you notice, Anthony, you notice the pollen, man?
It's been really, really rough at the park.
It has. It's like, I don't know if it's just because we've been staying inside. It's almost like, I think if you go outside and breathe it every day, you get used to it within a week or two. And if you stay inside and only go out once in a while, I think you don't get used to it, and it really hits you harder.
I don't think I ever get used to it, but it's been particularly bad this year for sure.
That's my theory, that we've got inside lungs lately in the past year, and getting, outside, it's like, damn, where'd all this, because I went to a show Saturday night, at Music on Main Street. I actually saw a live concert for the first time in a year. And, had it not been outside, it wouldn't have happened. But it was great. It was a Paul Simon tribute that our singer Matt plays in, along with our friends Adrian Ash and the crew. And it was great. Paul Simon has an amazing catalog. I really have grown to love his music. And I got to say, I grew up hearing certain songs, but I didn't have the records. And then I met these folks about 5 years ago, and they really, really turned me on to all the different great Paul Simon songs. And that was great because, I love discovering an artist's catalog that I didn't pay attention to, I can imagine the thrill of listening to Yes for the first time at 50 something. I mean, I can't imagine it, but it's kind of like that, but with other people's catalogs, I mean, with this year, it was 10cc. I totally, and Godley and Cream. And I have thoroughly loved absorbing that music and dissecting it. And last year I was on a Squeeze kick. So I've kind of done the prog stuff already, many years ago. So, these new groups that I'm discovering, which are old, or a lot of them are more along the lines of pop and stuff like that. So I've
One of the bands that you actually turned me on to, this.
The Tubes. Yeah, they're awesome, man. Have you enjoyed that so far?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's some kind of proggy stuff in there. Some of it, there's, it's pop, but it's really adventurous pop music with kind of almost a Zappa-esque kind of streak running through it from time to time. And they're all really great players. Fee Waybill, great frontman. And Todd Rundgren produced some of that stuff too. Of course, a huge, that's my wish list, Stephen. I would love to talk to Todd Rundgren.
Right. I remember you saying that a lot. Yeah.
Yes. So if the gods are shining on me, please do, because I'd love to chat with Todd. And I'd love to chat with his bass player, Kazim Sultan, as well. So yeah, I got a wish list, we'll just have to wait and see what comes of the next year. Every month is you never know. It's just like, what am I going to do? But I've also worked in some different kind of shows. I've discovered that while having a guest is a surefire way to attract people's attention, having a themed show that doesn't even have a guest per se, and it's just about a subject, can be as popular as having a well-known guest. So I've done some kind of more theoretical angle shows. I did one with my friend Bill Graham, who's our keyboard player you heard on the theme song, come in and dissect the Steely Dan catalog. And that turned out to be a really interesting show, which I think was enjoyable for people that, if you're a musician, of course, and understand theory, then I'm sure he was talking your language. And if not, it's probably just fun to sit back and listen to him play all these parts of Steely Dan songs on the piano. So, you kind of enjoy it on a couple different levels. So we're going to do some more of those. I think we're going to do a series about Zappa's music next. And as Bill pointed out, we can't really do Zappa's story in one show. There's just no way. It's more like start with the Mother stuff and then maybe move into the stuff right after that in the early 70s and then go to I don't know. We'll see. But it's a cool angle to work, and I have another one where I'm going to get together with two prog guitar player friends of mine, and we're going to sit back and play like 20 of the greatest riffs from prog rock. And, it's like I'm always holding a guitar. It's like occasionally I'd like a reason to show you, to play for you, because we don't really have musical guests on here per se. But that's another thing I wouldn't mind doing in the next year, because people have said, why don't you have a musical segment? Like almost like, why don't you make your guest play something for you while they're there chatting with you? And I was like, I'm not going to put anybody on the spot like that. I'm just glad to have them.
There's your musical segment again.
Oh, yeah? I could do that. Hold on. That's right. We actually played this song for the first time in a year or more last week. Stephen came over and jammed, and we played all of that song. We remembered most of it. It went pretty well.
A little rusty.
A little rusty.
First spots were, yeah.
Yeah, it's been quite a while.
I know them. I just got them confused with other spots in the song.
You sounded great. I didn't even notice. Well, I guess we should wrap it up here. It's getting kind of late, but what a year it's been, and I feel very blessed to have the opportunity to do this. And thank you all for tuning in and believing in me. It means a lot. And
thanks for doing
it. Well, thank you, Ron. It was something I was just kind of inspired to do, and I can be really driven once I set my sights on a particular goal, and it's something I'm passionate about. I'm gonna give it all I got and see what happens. So, all right. Well, I will be back Friday afternoon at 2:00 Eastern, chatting with Billy Cobham. So please come back and hang out with us. And again, please subscribe to our page at YouTube /SOAL, SOAL, Night Live. And one last thing, I want to give props to my father, the painter, Lee Tonar. This picture that you see every week, almost every week, is one that he did. And it's let me bring it over here and let you get a good look at it. It's been a nice opportunity to let the world see this artwork every week. And that's it there. It's kind of lady walking down the dirt road in the afternoon kind of picture. But he was a great painter and a real inspiration. And I just like to share this in the background each week as a way of saying, hey, Dad, thanks for the inspiration. All right, you guys, take care. Stay safe. Come back anytime. Good luck with your show, Ron.
Thank you.
100+ subscribers. That's the way to do it, brother. All right, you guys. Take care.
Cheers on 900, Sean. Cheers.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And let's see if we can hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of May. Fingers crossed. Please help me out. Spread the word. All right. Take care.